Almost forgot to bring the mic over. What's happening, everyone? What is going on, going down, going by? I am so stoked to do a little reacting, in my own little way. My reaction is not going to be the same as anybody else's, but at the same time, I'm not trying to make anything too complicated. So, we are just going to all have a little fun, just talk about my opinions on, kind of what happened and why and whatnot. And then, we're going to call it a day. Today, oh, and let me put up the thumbnail for you all. Oh, first, housekeeping. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Inner Storyteller. Welcome back to your real life. So good to be back. Um, Am I gonna drop Saturdays? I don't know, or am I gonna? Cause like I didn't do Thursday or Saturday last week. I think I didn't do Thursday. Um, but you know, trying to remain as consistent as possible. Um, but welcome back. Thank you for being here. Definitely, grab a chair, grab some water, and let's get into today's topic. We are talking about Candace versus Andrew Wilson on the great debate. That's right. Um, if you are here, you are in for real conversations, good people. We talk about natural law, we talk about religion, we talk about money, anarchy, culture, the good, the bad, ugly, and the great, and how mankind is manipulated from the shadows by people that do not have our best interests at heart. Perhaps because they are completely evil. I don't know. But we are not bashing faith systems. We are not calling people stupid for believing this or having this religion or whatever. We are simply examining the psychological affects and effects of the stories that we have the most faith in, the ones we have the most stake in, and how those stories help shape society. And that examination has to sit right alongside an honest look at the current human condition, which is slavery. Government is slavery, good people. And the question we got to keep coming back to always is what can actually be improved with a proper understanding of one's inner storyteller and how it works. So, the so called great debate. All right, we've had enough of that. Today, let's talk a little bit about the Candace Owens versus Andrew Wilson debate. Moderated by Patrick Bet David. Um, People are not very impressed with Mr. Patrick Bet David right now, but they're not hating on him. Barron definitely is giving him a whole lot of grace and um like Coach Colin, like nobody in the very, very pro Candace camp is saying anything negative about Patrick Bet David. Just more so just X posts. There's a lot of people that um well, first of all, X is just going bonkers. In response to this debate, X is going wild. I mean, there's meme after meme. Um, Iran or somebody, I don't know if it was Iran. Somebody put out a Lego song, the Lego music video that they put out against Trump that Iran did put out. Same kind of AI Lego video about the Candace versus Andrew debate. It was like I don't know, 3 hours after the debate finished, they already made the because they knew or something that it was just going to be a slaughter fest. I am of the opinion that there was a winner. There was a definitive winner of this debate, and it's obviously Candace Owens to me. But let's get into why that's obvious. I want to get into why that's obvious in my opinion because of the reactions that I'm seeing online. Plus, I really enjoy Candace Owens' content and the direction that she's choosing for what she covers on her show, both during the investigation and when she does little side quests, episodes or segments of an episode, diving into historical information, diving into um, health based information, diving into the history of the dark occult orders behind governments. It's really great watching her sort of awakening unfold. And as far as this debate, I watched it twice. Okay, peep the transcript, and I'm gonna give you my analysis. Not as a cheerleader for Candace, by the way, although I am super biased for on Candace's side, but as someone who has been following the case since September, I don't know, 13th, 2025, and who has watched the footage from the preliminary hearing and who has understanding of how debates work, what constitutes winning one to a little degree. Um, there, you know, something lost the debate before it started, in my opinion. Andrew Wilson, he publicly agrees to debate, um, no, he publicly agrees to publicly agree to terms, right? He publicly demands, you could say, that the terms be agreed to on X so that um, the terms don't change, right? Prevent the terms from changing privately. That's why they agreed to them publicly, so that Candace can be held to the fire if she wants to make a change, or and so can he. So Andrew Wilson's publicly agreed to debate position was there is overwhelming evidence that Tyler Robinson shot and killed Charlie Kirk. That was his publicly agreed to position in the demand for a publicly agreed to debate terms exchange. Okay? Before the actual date of the debate on X between him and Candace Owens. It was the position he begged to debate publicly. Oh, Nick, what up? Looking forward to the time we can throw our natural law debater type person that these big. Yo, put me in, coach. Put put me in. Put me in. I'll even go lose on accident. You know what I'm saying? I got tough skin. Yeah, 75%. We're getting right. We getting to that very quickly. But first, I gotta build it out. What up, Nick? Thank you for commenting. Y'all let me know what y'all think about my analysis of this great debate in the comments. So he specifically insisted that terms be established on the record openly so that Candace could not change them later. So that either of them could not change them later. He wanted public accountability for the position that each respectively chose. Ergo, he wanted public accountability for him backing up his own position. Very important. And so did we. We loved that it was public. We love when Candace tweets at somebody she doesn't like, even when she's respectful, because we just love it. It's just we love drama. Can't deny it. So here's the first thing that Andrew Wilson said when Patrick Bet David introduced the debate topic. He said, quote, and what I mean by overwhelming is, and he said it while looking down at his wobbling foot. And what I mean by overwhelming is just that I find it very convincing. Right now, I find it convincing. That's, I think, what most people mean when they say overwhelming evidence. So that's in his opening statement. Before any so-called evidence was presented before any exchanges of any, significance took place. And basically, the first breath of this debate, he was, you know, given in the first breath that he was given after the topic was stated, he redefined the word that he agreed to defend. He said, "Overwhelming no longer means overwhelming." And I should have prepared the exact definition. Define, oops, define. I wonder how many people did this. Overwhelming. Okay, share screen. Where is my share screen? Skadoosh. Bam. Oh, and then I gotta add it to the stage. Overwhelming, an adjective that means something is very great, intense, or powerful. It describes a force, amount, or feeling that is too strong to fight against or too hard to deal with. Too strong to fight against or too hard to deal with. Too much to handle. Very strong force. Deep emotion. He had he had a lot of deep emotions during this debate, but none of them were in support of this notion of very overwhelming evidence. Pardon me. Let me take the very out. Let me take the very overwhelming evidence. So, overwhelming is not a legal term, by the way. It's not an obscure word requiring clarification at the beginning of a debate that's going to happen in front of millions of people, right? It's a very common English word that has a clear meaning and is used every day, everywhere, all the time. So much evidence on one side that the other can barely be even considered, right? That an alternative story can barely be considered because the evidence is crushing, it's definitive, it's conclusive. We're going to come back to that word, conclusive, right? It leaves no or very little room, infinitesimal room for serious doubt. And that is what he publicly on X claimed to want to defend. That is what he publicly insisted on having. And in his opening statement, before a witness was called, before an exhibit was introduced to the court, he told you overwhelming today means he finds it pretty convincing. Okay. You do not get to, on the day of, redefine a very commonly used word and have that taken seriously by anybody analyzing whether or not you won a debate. Okay. Because there's this AI that said he won the debate. Yeah. Sure. um Now, when Patrick Bet David, when the host of this episode and moderator for this debate, which, you know, with the consistent interruptions, he did absolutely no moderating. But whatever. Um, when Patrick pressed him a little bit just to get a real, let's say, a more solid grasp on his position in this debate, okay, between 0 and 100, says Patrick Bet David, what is the likelihood that Tyler Robinson shot and killed Charlie Kirk based on the evidence right now? And Andrew Wilson, infamously now, says 75 to 85%. So, pretty convincing is now defined today as 75 to 85% likely. So he defined overwhelming as pretty convincing to him, and then pretty convincing to him was quantified as three quarters. Three quarters to uh 4/5. or so. I think I did that math wrong. Anyway, I think 4/5 is 80%. Anyway, about 80%, right? Between 75 and 85. That's what Baron Coleman said. About 80%, right? Tyler Robinson is charged with aggravated murder. The prosecution is seeking to kill this man. Okay? The legal standard for a death penalty conviction is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt is not a vague standard in legal terms either. It is the highest evidentiary bar in the American legal system, deliberately placed there to protect human beings from being executed by the state on insufficient evidence. Not that that doesn't happen anyway, but that's that's what they say why it was put there, right? If a juror has reasonable doubt, let's say they're not 100% convinced that it happened. They're not even 93% convinced that it happened. They're not even 90% convinced that it happened. If a juror has reasonable doubt that this person is guilty, they are instructed not to convict. That's the standard. You shall not convict if you possess reasonable doubt, because the alternative, right, is the execution of the innocent. Now, Andrew Wilson, knowing this, he's not as stupid as he made himself look. Andrew Wilson, the most prominent public advocate for the position that the evidence against Tyler Robinson is overwhelming. He's obviously not the most prominent, but right now, because this debate happened, he's the most viewed public advocate for the position that the evidence against Tyler Robinson is overwhelming. He told the world on a nationally streamed debate stage, internationally viewed debate stage, that he has 0.75% investment in the belief that Robinson actually shot and killed Charlie Kirk. That's not overwhelming. Just in case you were wondering, that's not too hard to fight, or too strong to fight, too hard to deal with, something like that. It's not that. Now, what's important about this is nobody should play with a human life, should play like Russian roulette when the death penalty is on the line. Actual Russian roulette, right? That's why you don't let people actually play Russian roulette, right? 75 to 85% confident is definitely reasonable doubt. It's far beyond reasonable doubt. It's just regular doubt. And it's stated publicly, and this is a debate by the man who spent 4 months or so, calling the evidence overwhelming, and everything else is secondary to that moment. That is the debate claim, because that was the publicly agreed to position by the person doing the begging, that we publicly agree to our positions and that we publicly agree to the terms of the debate itself. Now, the debate had clear two positions established before it began. Andrew was to argue what we said, and Candace was to argue that the evidence supporting the conclusion that Tyler Robinson was set up as a patsy is overwhelming. And she didn't back down from the regular meaning of the word overwhelming, because she was prepared to defend that position. She didn't move on them. He did in his opening statement. What followed in the debate was not Andrew defending the position that he agreed to defend. What followed was Andrew asking Candace questions about the things that she had said on her own show and playing clips that he brought as somewhat surprises and interrupting her repeatedly when she began to build towards supporting her own position and changing the subject with a new question every time she got close to completing a substantive argument. Again, I watched the debate twice. I'm not over exaggerating by any stretch. Watch it for yourself. You will see this play out. Okay. There's a pattern that is very visible throughout this entire debate. When Candace is allowed to speak freely, when she speaks, when she answers Patrick Bet David's question, when when she just chooses to dominate the floor for a moment because she really could do that at any moment. He just really was out of his league here, in my opinion. But when she would choose to do so, and she would speak for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, with a flow of consciousness, when she was not interrupted, when a question did not switch the topic mid sentence, her command of the information is complete, and I mean like the corners are painted, like everything is done. She names officers by first and last name that are involved. She names the times down to the minute of when things happened and when messages appeared or messaging appeared in the media or somebody did a press conference or whatever. She knows the testimony from the preliminary hearing from front to back from all 5 days with absolute precision, as demonstrated in not only this debate but also on her show. But you would assume on her show, she's preparing and it's kind of easier to do. She was doing so on the fly at the debate. She never looked at any technology, although after his opening statement, I don't believe Andrew was looking at technology either. But you know what I'm saying? Like, she was prepared. She knows what was said about fingerprints. She knows what was said about the DNA. She knows the Utah 1102 rule for um, what they called reliable hearsay, right? The standard for evidence at the preliminary hearing in this trial because it's in Utah. And she was prepared to debate every point. She did not get to debate them in any sustained way because the format that Wilson, uh, kind of forcefully created through his own conduct, the constant interruption, the constant topic switch, the questions aimed at her show rather than at the agreed debate position, prevented all of that, right? And yet, within that framework, she raised very substantive evidentiary points that he could not answer and that he avoided engaging entirely, presumably because he does not know anything substantive about the case. He has nothing to add to the conversation. That's my presumption of it. And there's a specific problem that came up. It was so funny too, because he tried to really press the like with the gotcha. Um, he tried to really press the gotcha button on this next point that I'm going to go into. And when you watch it happen, and you can see on Andrew Wilson's face the moment that he notices that, oh shit, this didn't work. Damn, I didn't do what I set out to do. Damn it. Dang it. Okay, I need a tactic. I need a clip. I need a something. Okay, so here we go. It's the fingerprint problem. Okay, you if you hear and you already saw the debate and you know what I'm talking about. It's the fingerprint problem that he tried to bring up a multitude of times, and then it was hilariously like the last clip that they had. So here we go. Among the fingerprint evidence presented at the preliminary hearing was the testimony that Tyler Robinson's fingerprints were the most degraded among the 5 more sets of prints found on the weapon, right? What does that mean if Tyler Robinson is the person who fired the weapon hours before it was recovered by the cops who gave it to the FBI? The most recently handled weapon would carry the freshest, most intact prints from the person who handled it most recently. A gun used as a murder weapon and then hidden in the woods would be expected to have the shooter's prints as the clearest, most recent, most intact. The FBI forensics analysis who testified also said when you get above 2 contributors in a mixed DNA sample, it becomes very difficult to make definitive determinations. And there were 5 or more sets of prints on that weapon. I think up to 7, I think. It was either 7 or 9, I forget. Yeah. Now, Candace raised this. She asked Andrew to explain how Tyler Robinson's fingerprints could be the most degraded if he had just recently fired the weapon. And Andrew's response to this was, so what? So what? So what? Oh, and then he said he didn't know how to explain it. He acknowledged he did not have an answer for that, which is directly in support of Candace's publicly agreed to position that there's strong evidence or overwhelming evidence that Tyler Robinson was set up as a patsy. Because they do have a gun in their possession. Law enforcement that was involved do have a gun in their possession. But for some odd reason, they just can't explain the anomalies surrounding the gun and the DNA and the dust and debris in the barrel, which was another point. And the family heirloom explanation that Candace raised, that the gun was passed down to Robinson because he was the firstborn son and that he was described as not much of a shooter, very important, that he stored it rather than used it, most likely, that provides a very plausible account for why his prints may have been older and more degraded than other family members who may have handled it after he stored it. He puts it somewhere, never touches it, and every now and again, when a visitor, family member is over, and they want to go see it, they want to take it out the box, take it off of the shelf, whatever, they touch it, put it back. Nobody shoots it, so it's just gathering dust. And that explains the dust and debris in the barrel. Wilson's response is that dust and debris could have been there even if it was shot. And while that's physically possible, it's also physically possible that that weapon was not recently fired. And it's not likely that if it was shot, that dust and debris would remain in the barrel. Right? Maybe dust. But debris? You got to be kidding me. But for the sake of argument, neither answer is conclusive, legally speaking, which is exactly the point. An unanswered question about fingerprint degradation combined with an inconclusive identification on the surveillance footage, combined with an absence of a confirmed weapon, right? They can't actually place the weapon on the roof in a way that anybody can actually confirm. Where the public has no idea whether that gun was ever actually on the roof. So combined with the absence of a confirmed murder weapon, these are evidentiary questions that have not been resolved, and Candace named them And she tried to name others and was cut off time and time and time again. She had so much to add to this conversation. And Andrew couldn't explain anything that she independently brought up. And then there's the issue of the AI bot. I think it was just one saying that Candace conceded points. Candace conceded this and that. I poignantly disagree. Or no, what is it? I disagree. I'm getting ready to refute that. Okay, I think I completely misused poignant, but I don't know. Maybe I'll look that up in a second. A few things worth being precise about, because some coverage of this debate has been categorizing things as concessions that are not concessions. Lance Twiggs' DNA being the main one. Okay, Candace Owens did not concede on the Lance Twiggs DNA point. Candace had previously misspoken on her show in a way that implied Lance Twiggs' DNA was confirmed in that sample of DNA from the weapon. She corrected this already before the debate. Andrew Wilson, on the day of the debate, raised it as if it were a live issue of some kind. What she clarified, okay, what actually happened, is she clarified at the debate that the identity of the additional contributors of DNA besides Tyler and Matt Robinson is not publicly confirmed. It could include Lance Twiggs, but we don't know the names of those contributors yet, the public at large. So it hasn't been ruled out that Lance Twiggs' DNA is on the weapon, indeed. Right? And more importantly, for the content of this episode, the context of this episode, correcting an imprecise way of speaking before the debate, mind you, is not a concession during the debate. That's not how debates work. It's intellectual honesty, right? Andrew raising it, what, 4 or 5 times? As if it were a revelation that demonstrates a flaw in Candace's character or something. He either didn't know that she already addressed it or chose to bring it up for some sort of, you know, he has a team of clippers that clip his content so that, everybody gets the impression that people are watching the long form content when, most of it just comes from the short form content. Regardless, and I don't know his analytics, so I'm not making a legal claim. I'll say, he has this team of clippers and they do their job. Okay. Now, on her certainty about Robinson's actual role, because that's another thing that they say is, oh well, she admitted that she doesn't know what his role is, but then she says she's 0% convinced that he could have taken the shot. Well, doesn't that mean that you can't be 0% because when you say you don't know what his role is, he could have been the shooter? No. No, it doesn't mean that. Okay, Candace said that she's 0% convinced Tyler Robinson was the shooter. She happened to say that at the beginning of the debate because she was asked that directly. Can you put a percentage to you thinking Tyler Robinson was specifically the shooter? She said 0% based on the evidence. Okay, so she is 0% convinced Tyler Robinson was the shooter. She also said she doesn't know what role he may have played that day. Those two statements are entirely consistent with her stated position, right? The Patsy theory does not require Robinson to have had zero involvement in the event. It requires that he was set up, he was used, he was positioned, he was framed, manipulated in some way. As specifically the person that will take the fall for the alleged shooter or whatever happened. Now, saying that she doesn't know his role is not retreating from the Patsy claim. It's being intellectually honest about direct questions that she's being asked on her sort of way to explaining how she logically got to the conclusion that there's overwhelming evidence supporting the idea that Tyler Robinson is a patsy in this case. These are not the same thing as conceding her position. In my opinion, Candace Owens did not concede anything. She did not concede any footing, especially not on her stated position in the entire debate. And of course, of course, here's what connects all of this to the work that we do on this channel, right? The word overwhelming did the filing before the debate began. As far as the inner storyteller looks at the word overwhelming, we already have a story for what that word means. What it means for someone to feel overwhelmed by something like evidence supporting someone's conviction, ergo, they're being put to death by the state. For 11 months, no, excuse me, for 4 months, every time that Andrew Wilson said the evidence against Tyler Robinson is overwhelming, we in the audience, in the audience of Twitter, in excuse me, X, and the audience of the hype for this debate, and the audience of all of the antics that led up to the public discussion about an official debate, right after or leading up to the Joe Rogan interview that actually manifested the debate itself. 4 months, every time he said that, we, the audience, filed the case into the conclusive drawer. We said, oh, well, the evidence is overwhelming. Dang, looks like Candace is insane. Because overwhelming carries the specific emotional and cognitive weight that it carries. Okay, our inner storyteller says, okay, well, it's if it's overwhelming, it's going to be hard to overcome that with argumentation. And until there was actually a debate, that displayed how outclassed any of these people who are essentially revealing themselves to be grifting off of this tragic event, how out of their league they are in stepping to the person that kind of cares, has demonstrated to care the most about getting to the truth in this investigation. That word overwhelming kind of did a lot of work. It protected Andrew and the rest of them, because it put us at the edge of our seats waiting to receive overwhelming evidence of some kind. Candace even said this during the uh one of the streams of consciousness where she was able and not interrupted, and she was able to just talk for a little while. I think she was answering a question from the moderator, from Patrick Bet David, where she's explaining that we all expected during the hearing to be completely surprised at least one piece of conclusive evidence placing Tyler Robinson either as the shooter or at least as seen on campus on surveillance footage. And we didn't see any of that. Not only did we not see any of that, But the lengthy conversation regarding the DNA evidence revealed that they can't even conclusively place the gun or the bullet into the story as the FBI told it in the beginnings of this journey, right? Basically, for right now, there is the same amount of conclusive evidence that this marker here in Austin, Texas, that this marker is as connected or is connected with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Um, there's just as much evidence connecting that marker to that day as the 98 Mauser. Conclusive evidence, pardon me, right? And it's just so crazy, man. It is insane that the first thing he said was that overwhelming doesn't mean overwhelming, and actually he came here to defend a position he is 75 to 85% convinced is even true. That is insane. That will go down in infamy forever. You know what I'm saying? Hey, I got 3 viewers. Hey y'all, what's happening? Say something in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Um, people try to use word magic in a whole lot of ways, and that was like the most unsuccessful use of word magic I have ever seen in my life. The moment that the word was redefined, that he said overwhelming means that, to me it's pretty convincing. The moment that he tried to do that, the deal was sealed. Right? Like you you really thought it was a good idea to say, hey, American public, world public, because this is a worldwide viewed debate. Overwhelming actually means pretty convincing, at least for its use in this debate. Even though, 4 days ago, I publicly agreed to, without redefining the term overwhelming, to debate that this man should be put to death because of the overwhelming nature of the evidence against him. It is so insane and pathetic and weird. You know, in a death penalty case, right? Moments like that really matter. Not just as a debate point either, as the basic human standard for what we're willing to do or enable to happen to another person based on how, certain we are that they deserve it. Candace has been asking questions, I would say, in my opinion, asking the right questions about this case since it happened, and she's been noticing inconsistencies and all of these things, and she's obviously been studying this case um, very sincerely. She showed up very prepared, eager to argue every point that he may have said something or brought up, as well as defend her publicly stated position. And she was met with a format that prevented sustained argument and order, prevented um, even an environment where she can, let's say, where it's not a waste of time to argue against the notion that there's overwhelming evidence, right? To refute the point that there's overwhelming evidence against Tyler Robinson, because he redefined the term overwhelming, or he attempted to, right? But that's my honest analysis of what happened in the debate. I was trying to think before I started this episode. I was like, am I going to show clips from the debate? I could show clips from the debate, but like everybody already has all of the best clips. They're all out there. I'm a couple days after. And so I didn't prepare timestamps or anything like that. It's just, for me, very apparent that if you watch the debate itself, or if you watch, like, I would recommend, if you have the stomach for very long form content, or you work a job where you can just have your earphones in, or have your podcast going, and that's just your background noise. I would watch Ian Carroll's 6 hour breakdown, where he goes line by line. So he lets the debate go for a while, and then he reacts to that portion. And he watched the whole debate before he did the video. So he goes line by line, reacts to every single piece, and I think it's my opinion that take on the um Ian Carroll's take on the uh debate is accurate. That's my opinion, that he does a good job analyzing, um, and it's also very entertaining to watch. But it is 6 hours. So me, I have my earphones in at work. That's how I saw it. I had it on, and I was at work, and I was doing my work, and I just didn't turn it off. So my phone didn't die, and I played that video. Regardless, um, like I said, this is my honest analysis of the debate. The audience that watched it and drew their own conclusions and have the transcript, can, you know, hash it out in the interwebs, in the comment sections of the interwebs, and hopefully a little bit of that involves you guys asking the question, what story am I willing to live? That's all for me today. I will see you all tomorrow. And look out for another appearance from Sarah Cross on Wednesday, as well as Aaron on Friday. Peace and love always, and all.